regard or respect for reps, and I think they all should be exterminated. What is American gangster about them American rap? Raful and Alpo and Nicky Barnes and Sammy Book, man, them rap.
What you're about to see, the first part of our series, may be disturbing. If the kids are still awake, discretion is advised.
Raful Edmonds, who was once called the biggest drug dealer in Washington, D.C.
I don't think anybody has ever monopolized the drug trade to that extent before or after Raful.
You turn the tremendous intellect and leadership skills into building a criminal organization, the likes of which the Washington, D.C. had never seen.
I remember when he first met Melvin Butler, you know what I mean? You could tell they was on some gang shit.
Prosecutors say Butler was Edmonds' West Coast cocaine connection.
Me and him took a trip to L.A. And when we got to L.A., Melvin gave us like $50,000. So Ray, he basically gave me about $20,000. So we was out there for about a week. But when Melvin had come to D.C.,
we got the California dudes down here. Me, Melvin, Whitey. I mean, our whole little crew, we go like 3 cars deep.
So listening to Bootsy, the defendant's own mother, who was also convicted co-conspirator, talk to Alter Ray Zanfill about Raful Edmonds and how he got started in the drug business and how he got so huge in the drug business has got to be devastating.
Edmonds' unsuspecting mother talked at a local restaurant with a friend who had agreed to wear a wire for the prosecution.
You know, like he was doing hand-to-hand coming, him and Johnny on the corner, and they was selling, so they was getting it selling, right. And then he just got to say, he just went out on his own.
According to police, Edmund was so powerful and so dangerous, the jury in his trial had to sit behind bulletproof glass, their identities hidden from the public for their own safety.
They had an anonymous jury panel so that the jurors' names and addresses weren't put on the jury list as they do in any other trial.
They wasn't scared of the judge, you know, because he was real polite. You know, showed him a lot of respect and let him know he appreciated him sitting there as jurors, you know, through this long trial. And they wasn't scared of the prosecutors because they wasn't on trial. They was just doing their job. They was at work every day. So the only person in the courtroom to be scared of, they wasn't scared of defense attorneys because they was doing their job every day. Only people in the courtroom to be scared of or think all this is for can be the defendants.
The jury found Edmund guilty of a massive drug conspiracy and sentenced him to life without parole.
I always knew throughout the whole trial that we was going to get found guilty.
The verdict today in the Edmond drug ring trial in Washington, 24-year-old Raful Edmonds convicted of running a $2 million a week cocaine crime outfit in the nation's capital. The one-time schoolyard basketball star faces a mandatory life sentence now. 10 co-defendants, including friends and relatives, were found guilty on related charges. Security surrounding the trial was unusually tight. Names of the jurors were kept secret even from the judge and lawyers to guard against possible reprisals.
The FBI got a tip from an informant that Raful was setting up deals from the prison at Lewisburg.
Edmonds' drug activities while incarcerated surpassed in volume and in scope the drug distribution network that he developed and ran prior to his imprisonment.
Communication between the capitals of Colombia, one of the drug-producing centers of the world, and the United States, one of the drug-consuming centers of the world, exists on two levels.
Cellmate at USP Lewisburg was the third largest cocaine dealer in the world. Chiqui Osvaldo Trujillo Blanco.
One of the sons of Griselda Blanco, who was one of the original founders of the Medellin cartel.
He's sitting on top of a family empire in Colombia manufacturing cocaine. Raful knew when he was back on the street, he made all these connections.
played the tapes for him with his voice setting up drug deals.
Should the money already? Should the money?
We got the undercover officer there that you can meet and see who we'd actually been arranged for drugs with Ray, with the evidence we had against him, how long we'd been investigating him.
I have no problem using snitches. You have to prove the cases under our system of laws.
He told us that he'd been thinking about this for a very long time.
He'd already made a decision that when they stepped to him, he was going to cooperate.
We arranged for him to call us, collect at an undercover apartment, and then instead of his friends and family three-way phone calls, we would three-way the phone call for him.
You beep your source, he gets back to you on the number, you make your arrangements, and it's normally by public telephones, which make interception by electronic surveillance.
Okay, that's how we set it up. They will call me and I will call back.
We were very surprised that Raful was hoping for this.
Right now, it's kind of sad. Because when I'm in jail, most of the time, I'm separated from everybody. You know, they keep me locked down. I don't like that. I'd rather be just a, ordinary prisoner. I don't want to be looked at like I'm different than any other human being that's in jail. I'm just like them. I'm in jail right now.
What about your mother?
My mother?
Your mother on tape talking about you.
I don't know if she was talking about me or who she was talking about.
In the war on drugs, one of the most important weapons the government uses is the informant. With mandatory minimum penalties now for drug offenses, the pressure is on to name names. But with so much at stake, can an informant be trusted to be telling the truth?
People ask me every day, what do I do to look the way that I do? When I tell them it's 99% diet, they usually give me some kind of weird look and they say, oh, great, it's another one of these guys. But then I say, my diet is almost 99% superfoods. That's what makes it easier for me. Then they usually ask, which superfoods exactly are you using and can I get those too? Look, I'm not greedy. I want everyone to have the same advantages that I do. So here are my go-to superfoods for everyday use. And it's also the same combination that helped whip me into shape. I'm Drew Canoli, and I am obsessed with superfoods. I'm the weird dude that goes into Whole Foods and smells like patchouli. Today, I want to show you my 11 favorites that you can naturally get in less than 30 seconds a day, and you can take them while traveling, and they'll help you stay healthy and committed to maybe that weight loss or that fat burning regimen. Are you ready? I'm talking fast today, so try to keep up. First is chlorella. Now, chlorella is one of my favorite things. I like to call chlorella bella. Chlorella bella. And it's absolutely incredible. Astronauts take this stuff in space. It's loaded with chlorophyll, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals. Gives you loads of energy. I just had 5 of these things. My energy's through the roof. Next up is moringa leaf. Separate studies have shown that moringa can lower blood.
By the early 90s, the government was paying informants or snitches more than $100 million a year. They paid thousands of others by reducing their sentences. Over the last 5 years, nearly a third of the people sentenced in drug trafficking cases in the federal system had their sentences reduced because they informed on other people. The mandatory minimum laws left only one way for defendants to escape the full force of the sentence: to provide the government with what the prosecution would deem substantial assistance. In other words, to inform on someone else. It is an issue which is now hotly debated.
If I offered a witness a $100 bill to come down and say it my way, I'd go to prison for that. But yet the government can give them something far more precious than money, far more precious than diamonds or gold or anything. They can give them freedom.
There are a lot of prosecutors who don't feel good about what they're doing. There are prosecutors who say, I didn't want this person to go to prison for such a long time, but it's my job. There are a lot of judges who've said on record, I did not want to give that person 10, 20, 30 years in prison, but it's my job. So if it's a part of your job, you have to do a good job. You have to put as many people in prison as you can.
We're beginning to become a society of informants.
You ever wake up in the middle of the night and say, I'm 25 years old, and they tell me I'm going to have to spend the rest of my life in.
Nah, I don't never wake up and say that because I don't believe it. I don't believe that I'm gonna spend the rest of my life in jail because I don't think that was meant for me to spend the rest of my life in jail. So I just don't look at it like that. I honestly don't believe it. I never even thought about it as far as just knowing I'm gonna be there even 10 or 15 years. I just know something is gonna happen good, and I'm gonna eventually get out. And then I'm gonna eventually get out. I'm gonna eventually get out.
He walked confidently toward the police helicopter, turned and mouthed these words. Look closely. Raful Edmonds said, I'll be back.
For safety, we're not showing the face of the man that members of Raful Edmonds' cocaine empire knew as Jimmy.
I was in there for like 3 days and got asked, did I want to do undercover work?
He was 26 when he began living undercover as a cocaine dealer. Unarmed and using only his wits, he worked his way close to the top of the cocaine wholesale operation that is estimated to have netted Raful Edmonds Jr. $1 million a day in the mid to late 1980s. 30 murders were tied to the operation. You knew it was an organization that enforced discipline with murder.
Yes.
He remembers shipments of cocaine delivered by the truckload.
And a guy sitting on the back with a Uzi, with 2 Uzis.
Then there's the legendary story about Georgetown basketball coach John Thompson's face-to-face confrontation with Edmonds. The coach told the basketball-loving drug kingpin, who reportedly offered as much as $50,000 to some Hoyas players to be on his playground team, to leave them alone.
Raful respected that because Raful was a big basketball fan.
The 1989 bust of the Raful Edmonds drug organization resulted in charges against almost 24 people. The sandstorm of cocaine that covered the nation's capital in misery and bloodshed would slowly start to recede. Jimmy says his only regret is that many who worked so hard to bring DC's drug kingpin to justice were never fully recognized for their work.
Group 32 from DEA MPD Task Force had always had my back on the street and had always watched me. And I'd do it again.
After he went to prison, he sold even more. Right here behind the concrete walls, steel bars, and locked doors of this maximum security federal penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Following his conviction as a drug kingpin, Edmond was sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. But within just days of his arrival, he was back in business. He was dealing drugs right from his prison cell.
Just about everybody inside the jail in some way, shape, form, or fashion is dealing in drugs, either directly or indirectly.
He was caught and 2 years ago struck a deal with the feds. Ever since, he's been telling them exactly how he pulled it off. Tell me what drugs you dealt with in prison. Cocaine?
Cocaine.
Crack?
Crack.
Heroin?
Heroin.
What else?
Marijuana. Those were the basic 4: cocaine, crack, and heroin, and marijuana.
There's nothing left. I mean, you did the gamut.
Yeah, I did it all.
He did it all and then some. For starters, he brought drugs into the prison through this visiting room. He hired other inmates whose girlfriends, during contact visits, would pass the stuff packed in small balloons.
She might kiss him, and he put them in his mouth. He drink a little bit of soda or water, swallow them. He go do it again. Good
He's
day.
got them all inside.
Got them all inside. Then when he get back inside the institution, he spit them up.
What's the most you ever heard of those that any one person?
That I ever seen one person bring? I seen somebody bring in like 60 of them.
Edmond says prison officials know this goes on.
It keeps the jail mellow. It's keep people patient. You know, they be able to get high and chill. So they like this and let these things happen sometimes.
Come on.
Yeah, that's what they do.
He wasn't just selling drugs to other prisoners. He also masterminded the shipment of more than 2 tons of cocaine and crack from the coca fields of Columbia to the District of Columbia.
In some ways, he's like the Babe Ruth of crack dealers.
Eric Holder, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, was, until recently, the top prosecutor in Washington, D.C. It was his office that locked Edmond up in the first place. Tell us the magnitude of his operation from inside the prison.
If you look at it on a monthly basis, he was exceeding that which he did when he was running what, to that time, had been the largest drug operation in Washington, D.C. history.
He was doing more from in prison? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, at its maximum, he was doing about 400 kilograms of cocaine per month while in prison, and while on the street, he was doing about 300 at its maximum.
Edmonds says it was easy to do from behind bars.
I think it's much easier than when you're on the street.
Easier than on the street?
Much easier because you're right there with the people that have direct access to the narcotics that you need. Colombians, Cubans, Mexicans.
All thrown in together?
All thrown in together.
Thrown in with criminals like Osvaldo Trujillo Blanco, or as Edmund knew him, Chicky, a convicted drug felon.
He had a high-profile case. I had a high-profile case. So, you know, we were just wanting somebody to introduce us. We just was waiting for a person to come along and say, this Chicky, this Ray. And we just gonna go from there. It was right there. What else? You know, what else could we do? It's right there.
Chicky is cocaine royalty, son of Griselda Trujillo Blanco, better known as the godmother of the Colombian drug underworld, and a founding member of the notorious Medellin drug cartel. Does it make any sense to put the biggest guy from D.C. and someone from one of the largest cartels in Colombia in such close proximity? You'd know it would be inevitable if they'd come together.
No, I'm not sure that's true. I wouldn't make that assumption. I would think that both people, having been put in federal prison, would have been incapacitated.
But they weren't. A year after Edmund met him, Chicky was released and returned to his horse ranch in Colombia. And that's when business really took off. So how did you pull it off? I mean, you were doing pretty serious and impressive deals.
Oh, yeah.
From inside, I love maximum security penitentiary. Specifically, how did you do it?
Specifically, we would use the visiting room, the telephones.
Specifically, these telephones, conveniently located just down the hall from his cell. Edmund would contact Chicky simply by placing a collect call to a friend in Washington. Every one of those calls was recorded.
Hello, this is the AT&T operator with a collect call. Who's calling, please?
Right.
Will you accept the charge? Uh-huh.
The friend, in turn, connected him to Chicky all the way down in Medellin.
What reason would I be calling out the country? I'm not from Colombia or South America. Or
Here's an inmate that's calling Medellin 3 and 4 times
a week. So you know I'm up to something. Just common sense would tell you. If you got good common sense, it would tell you that I'm up to no good.
In one afternoon, he made 59 phone calls to 5 states and 2 foreign countries. I thought that we listened in on their phone conversations. I thought that when a guy makes a phone call, that the prison kind of knows what he's talking about.
All the phone conversations, all the social phone conversations are recorded, but not all of them are monitored.
Now, does that make any sense?
Well, it doesn't make any sense except for the fact that they don't have the ability to. There's simply not enough people to listen in on all of the phone conversations that all of these prisoners have.
And the prisoners know that. They count on it.
Oh, I'm sure that's true.
But Edmund says he and Chicky weren't taking any chances. They spoke in code.
Remember, he used to live in 18th Street. Yeah. That he was going to move to downtown to 16th Street.
Yeah. When he made that statement to me, he was letting me know that the price went down 3,000, went from 19th Street to 16th Street. So I automatically knew what he was talking about.
Edmund used an entirely different code when he spoke to his distributors back in Washington, D.C. Believe it or not, he used Pig Latin.
You want to hear a little bit?
Yeah, I want to hear what you'd say.
What
did you say?
Oh, I was just saying, I feel good today.
So fast. You could do that.
You got to be fast so nobody will understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, and you could just do this whole interview like that?
Yeah, I could do the whole interview like that.
Now, what kind of money were you making out of this?
I wasn't making the money that I should be making, but I was getting 5,000 here, 10,000 there, which is good money for somebody that's in jail and doing time.
It was good money for anyone. $200,000 in 2 years collected for him by associates on the outside. But the money flow was disrupted when Chicky was gunned down in a Medellin nightclub, but only temporarily, because Edmund quickly struck up with another inmate, this time from the Cali cartel. Freddie Aguilera was serving 60 years with no parole, just a cell block away. And you hook up with another Colombian.
Yeah. Like I told you, the temptation, you got people every day, different people coming to me trying to hook up drug deals. And this is something that I can do and I know how to do. So it was just hard to say, no, I don't want to be involved in it when I can just say, okay, let me set this deal up and give me a quick $20,000 or $30,000.
Prison authorities never did figure out what Edmund was up to, But the FBI and local police here in Washington, D.C. did, thanks to a tip from a jailhouse informant. When the feds went to Edmond with the evidence, much to their surprise, he agreed to cooperate. With his help, the government was able to lock up 15 drug dealers, among them some of the most violent drug thugs in the nation's capital. Why did you decide to cooperate?
Because I wanted to put it all behind me. I wanted to help my family, first of all. That was the first thing that gave me the motivation. My mom, my aunt, and my 3 sisters.
His mom, his sisters, brothers, brothers-in-law, and others were all in the family business with Edmond and are all serving time. His mother and sisters are together at the Alderson prison camp in West Virginia. The feds told Edmond they would not recommend a sentence reduction for him, but they agreed to go to bat for his 56-year-old mother, who was sentenced to 24 years in prison for her role in Raful's drug enterprise.
That's my mom. And, I love her, so, and I miss her. And, I hope she'll be okay.
I feel very honored. I mean, he has life or 2 life sentences, and he didn't think about himself. He thought about his mother.
Constance Bootsy Perry is the unlikely matriarch of Washington's most prominent crime family. Before she got locked up, she had a $40,000 a year job in the federal government. So you got your kids educated, you made sure they went to church, you had a good job, your ex-husband had a good job.
Yeah, he had a job. He worked for the government, too.
He worked for the government. You were middle-class people.
Yes.
He was not raised in the inner city. He lived in the suburbs. Safe place.
Yes.
How many of your children are in jail?
6.
You had 7 kids and 6 are in jail. You're in jail?
Yes.
Come on. What happened?
I can't really say, and I think basically I'm in here only because I knew what was going on.
She was a mom to me, but also she was a personal friend to me. So when things, with selling drugs, like I told you before, so many things go wrong. People get killed, people lose their jobs, people get strung out. And whenever things go wrong or things don't go right in my life, she was my friend. I go talk to her and tell her about all these things, about what's going on with me. And she knew about all that. And she ended up telling all the things that I told her to and informant on a wiretap, and that made her be part of the conspiracy.
Well, it was more than that. Bootsy admits she once counted her son's drug money, and she accepted a car, a house, and other gifts purchased with his drug proceeds.
My mother always wanted a nice big house, so I wanted to be able to buy that for her one day. She always wanted a Mercedes. I wanted to be able to buy that for her.
When Edmond was a child, both his parents sold drugs. The father, allegedly heroin. Bootsy says she sold diet pills and admits she sometimes had Raful handle the money. But she blames his friends for getting him into the drug trade.
He saw the fast money, or he saw them driving big cars, and he said, hey, man, how did you do this? How did you get this?
The money.
Yeah, the money. Or greed. Just say greed. I'd say greed.
This is your watch.
Yeah, it used to be my watch.
Used to be your watch. The government now has this watch.
Yeah, the government owns it now.
How much did this watch cost?
Oh, close to $100,000.
Was this typical of what you would buy when you were...
Typical things that I would buy when I was home.
Well, you were fancy.
Yeah, I was real jazzy. Yeah, I like, try to have a lot of class.
Did you wear a lot of diamonds on your fingers?
I just had 1 carat. I just had a 10-carat diamond ring, a 3-carat for my ear, and just a diamond chain that matched the watch.
Very simple.
Yeah, just, simple, but stand out.
Today, he's trying not to stand out. So the feds have put him in a little-known witness protection program for convicts. He lives under an alias in a different prison where it's hoped those he betrayed won't find him. But if he's hiding out, why is he talking to us? He says he wants the kids in Washington, D.C., who see him as a hero, to know that what he did was wrong.
A lot of my friends from my neighborhood lost their lives because I brought drugs in the community. The
Crack
people
babies?
dying.
Crack babies?
Some babies probably was going from crack because of me. Yeah, I feel bad about them now, but back then, I was just thinking about the power.
We tried to ask the Bureau of Prisons what they're doing to prevent prison drug dealing, but they refused to comment. So we asked their new boss, Eric Holder, who has not yet had a role in making prison policy.
As a result of the Raful incident, a task force was created to really look at the whole system and decide what we could be doing.
been 2 years since you first found out about this. Not you, I mean the Bureau of Prisons, the government, the Justice Department. It's been 2 years, and from what I'm hearing, the problem really has not been fixed yet.
I think that's right.
You're saying that it's remotely possible that as we're sitting here, somebody in some prison's making a phone call and setting up a drug deal somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's remotely possible, but I think we're also going to be in a position real soon to say it's not possible.
Do you think that's going on today, right now?
I'm quite sure it is. Yeah, people are sitting in prison making drug deals. Yeah, and you're sitting there, you have nothing to do, and everybody needs money, and they love money. So I'm quite sure that it's going on right now.
In fact, the Bureau of Prisons may have made it even easier. When the FBI began its investigation of Raful Edmonds, there were 3 phones on his cell block, and inmates could use them every other day. Today, there are 4 phones, and prisoners can use them every day.
Let me say this about Ray, man. That story that he pumped out there about he only did it because to save his mother, that was some bullshit, man. Ray got weak.
Raful Edmonds III, remember that name, was sentenced to life in prison, but a district court just filed a motion to reduce that sentence. Want to know why? John Henry will tell you.
To understand why this is such big news, you first have to know the major impact Raful Edmonds had on D.C. 30 years ago.
In the late 1980s and early 90s, it was a lawless combat zone.
Back then, the district was murder capital of the country.
An automatic gunfire rang out.
And the crack cocaine epidemic helped fuel it.
People lining up 2 to 3 deep around the block to buy drugs.
At the center of it all, Raful Edmonds.
Edmonds ran the biggest crack and cocaine distribution ring in D.C. history.
I seen somebody at that time that was bigger than life.
At one point, he made up to $60,000 a day. That is, until he got caught.
Edmonds is serving a mandatory life term.
And yet, behind bars, he still broke the law.
There have been abuses of privileges that these inmates were given.
The operation from prison rivaled the scope of the organization Edmonds once ran from his Northeast neighborhood.
Now, Edmonds got an additional 30 years for his crimes in prison. So why do the feds now think he should be released early? Well, apparently, he talked a lot. For 20 years, the D.C. United States Attorney said his cooperation had been both deep and wide. He discussed cold case murders, participated in reverse undercover drug sting operations. It ultimately all led the attorney's office to ask a judge to consider reducing the 54-year-old's life sentence for his D.C. crimes to an unspecified term. Now it's up to a judge to see if that should happen.
Well, today, the last of 4 community hearings took place to help a federal court judge decide whether or not convicted drug kingpin Raful Edmonds should be released from prison early. As Inez de la Cuatera reports, those who attended today's hearing were divided over what should happen next.
The name of notorious cocaine dealer Raful Edmonds is often enough to get a strong reaction from any Washingtonian.
He was a part of an organized crime family. They murdered and slaughtered people. They decimated this city.
The federal government has asked a judge to resentence Edmonds after he cooperated with investigators, which has reportedly resulted in the arrests of dozens of other drug dealers. Today, D.C.'s Attorney General asked Washingtonians to answer 2 questions. Do you believe the court should grant the United States motion and reduce the sentence of Raful Edmonds? And if Mr. Edmonds' sentence is reduced and he is ultimately released, would you support his returning to the district?
Edmonds should not only not receive an early release, he should not be allowed near any young people.
Telling somebody that somebody did something to save your own butt is not rehabilitation.
This is gonna take forever. What? Seriously?
Not feeling supported by your hosting company? At Liquid Web, our helpful humans are available within 59 seconds to help. Upgrade your hosting to Liquid Web, where business grows.
Okay, here we go. We have Sean Branch, aka Teflon Sean, in the building, who's the author of the book Money, Murder, Mayhem, and is a notorious figure in Washington, D.C. history throughout the 80s. Well, number one, thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, this is your first time here, so I want to get into your whole story. So you grew up in Washington, D.C.
Correct, all my life.
Okay. And you had a mother. She was a warehouse employee?
Yeah, Hex Warehouse.
Okay. And I guess she also sold Avon on the side?
Yeah, you know, the hustle was, it was instilled in me at a young age just watching her.
Yeah, that was the hustle back in the 80s at Avon.
Yeah.
And your dad was actually a hustler himself.
Correct.
Okay. And I guess he's from the Dominican Republic, but he's half Dominican, half black?
No, he's actually from the States. He's from New York. And his father was Dominican. Yeah, his father was Dominican. My grandma was black.
Okay. And your dad was actually out in the streets?
Yeah, he was in the streets.
Like, how old were you when you first started seeing your dad and realizing what he did?
Well, I didn't. When I was young, I didn't. He kept me shielded from it. He kept it away from me. So I didn't really know until, you know, after he passed away, and I started to hear the rumors a lot about what was going on with him out there.
Okay. And at one point, your dad got murdered.
Yeah.
And this happened in front of you?
Nah, that part of the book, I had it. I fabricated that a little bit because I wanted to make the story interesting.
Okay. Well, how did your dad lose his life?
He died from cancer, actually, in real life.
Oh, okay. Got it. Well, I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. So you grew up on the 2000 block of Douglas Street in D.C.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a working class neighborhood, but it was down the street from Montana Terrace.
Right down the street.
So for those that don't know D.C., explain to me what Montana Terrace was in that time.
Montana Terrace was a notorious housing project, man, that was known for, you know, violence and getting a lot of money. It was a gold mine out there. So any given day, you could have, and I'm just throwing a number out there, 30, 40 people out there that can get rid of close to a key of coke a day. That's how much it pumped out there. And that's no exaggeration. Anybody that know about Washington, anybody know about Montana Terrace back then in the 80s knew that that was one of the gold mines in Washington.
Okay. How big was this project?
Far as radius, I couldn't tell you, but it was pretty big. It wasn't as big as, you know, some other projects in Washington, but it was big. It was pretty big.
Okay. And you came off the porch at 11 years old.
11 years old.
Right. And this was 1982.
1982, correct.
So there was a situation in elementary school that introduced you to the whole drug game.
Right.
So tell me about that.
It was introduced. It was a situation where a friend of mine, where he became a friend of mine later, and named Mo. And me and Mo, we was cool, and Mo flashed a bankroll on me one day. You know, and we kind of like bumped heads in the hallway. You know what I mean? Kind of clashed because, you know, he had a popularity. He was popular. I was popular. You know what I mean? And we was gritting on each other. Just one day we happened to come together. It was about to fight. And he seen that I wasn't going to back down. I seen he wasn't going to back down. And he asked me if I wanted to go to the store with him. He showed me a bankroll. So I'm thinking, at 11 years old, he stole it. I didn't know nothing about the game back then. You know what I mean? I didn't know nothing about it. So I'm thinking he stole the money. And when he told me he'd treat me, and I asked him, where did he get this money from? He told me he hustled. So when he said he hustled, I'm like, I'm still clueless. Like, you hustle where? He's like, man, Montana, you want to go? He told me Montana and showed me what it was he was hustling. I got a couple bags in my hand, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Okay. So he gave you 5 bags of cocaine initially,
Right.
told you what the prices were and told you not to get caught.
Exactly.
All right. So then you took those 5 bags and did what?
I sold him. I sold him. He showed me the ropes, man. Mo showed me a lot. I didn't have a clue. I didn't know who to sell them to, nothing. So I stood there and Mo brought me the customers and showed me the ropes, how it went. And during that process, man, I stumbled up on something else and I just took off.
Okay. Was this your first time being around drug addicts?
Yeah.
Okay. And these are not the most pleasant people to be around. So here you are, an 11-year-old kid still in elementary school, and you're dealing with adult drug addicts, right?
Right.
And these guys will do anything for a hit.
Yeah.
What types of situations was happening early on as a kid when doing this kind of hand-to-hand sales?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of interaction with them. You know what I mean? It's like they come and they tell you half a whole. Half was $50, a whole was $100. And you give them one bag if they want to have, you give them two if they want a whole, and they give you the money and they dip. That's it. And they out of here. So it wasn't a whole lot of interacting with them.
Okay. And how's the police presence during this time?
The police presence wasn't thick. They come through, you know what I mean? But the way we had it set up, where the older cats at the time had it set up was though the police couldn't come through the alley because the barricades, the couches and the trash cans and the abandoned cars that was blocking certain pathways to the strip where we was hustling at. They couldn't get up through that alley. So when they had to come through the streetway and run past the rec center, by the time they got out of the car, by the time they pulled up and got out of the car, somebody seen them and they alerted everybody else and they dispersed.
Okay. And you weren't the only 11, 12-year-old that was out there
Nah.
selling coke. There was a bunch of kids doing the same thing.
Bunch of them. Yeah.
Okay. So the older guys were kind of recruiting the young kids to sell for them?
Yeah, that was the way it was because, later on I found out if the older cats get the younger ones to sell the product and they get caught, you get a slap on the wrist. Pretty much in the juvenile system, right? You ain't gonna do no time. But if the older dudes get caught with it, they gonna get a boatload full. They gonna get an asshole full of time if they get caught. So that's when they was recruiting the youngest, to do their work.
Okay. And you started out with powder cocaine in the beginning.
Yeah.
Do you remember when it turned into crack?
It turned into crack and I know they was freebasing probably like 86. They start turning into crack around that time when I got exposed to it.
Did you see a big difference as the crack took over the powder cocaine?
Yeah, tremendous difference because the difference was between a cokehead that snorted and a crackhead that smoked it through the pipe was that level of geek that they was chasing. When they smoked the coke, they get that level of geek, and then when they come down, they chasing that high again. They chasing that geek feeling again. So that's what make them constantly come back for it. That's what make the craving even more intense for it.
Okay. So here you are, 12 years old, you're selling drugs, and you're coming home with $2,000 in your pocket. How were you explaining this to your mother?
She never knew. I would hide my money. It was times when she needed money for groceries or bills or something like that, where I would fake like I was going to either the car wash or the Safeway hustling bags, or the car wash washing car and just slide her a couple hundred. She was cool with it. She just thought that I was either washing cars or hustling bags at the grocery store.
Now, in the book, you said that you saw a man get his head blown off over a couple bags of coke that your friend Sean was selling. Did that actually happen?
Yeah, that was a crazy moment in my life, man. That was kind of like a turning point for me to know that how serious the streets was and how serious Montana terrorist was when I witnessed that. And I was still a kid, and all I remember like it was yesterday when a guy in a black trench coat.
The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, has a celebrity guest cast so huge, here's as many as we can fit into a 15-second promo. Hit it! Hey, y'all! Impressive! The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, streaming only on Disney+.
Came up and shot another guy in the head with a shotgun. I really didn't, I couldn't even tell you if I saw the body drop. I saw him fall. I got on my bike and I hauled ass. You know, I paddle as fast as my lower legs can move on that bike.
Okay, I didn't know it was a shotgun. A shotgun at close range is considered one of the deadliest weapons on earth. Having someone's head blown off close range with a shotgun, the amount of blood and gore that must have entailed must have been just crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy times of Montana terrorists, man. You've seen a lot, you know. It was a lot going on, and at any given minute, a person can lose their life for the smallest thing up there.
Okay, so you're focusing on selling drugs, and it got to the point where you never even went to high school.
Never went to high school.
Okay, and you were getting arrested during this time?
Well, I got arrested in '88. That's my first adult case. I was catching juvenile charges, but it was misdemeanors, and it was a slap on the wrist type of shit. And I caught my first serious adult case in '88. I was still a juvenile, so I was Title 16, charged as adult, and that was murder one.
Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. I just want to talk about what led up to that. So you're getting caught by the police, but it's little slaps on the wrist. So were you going to juvenile hall and coming back?
Yeah. I was going to juvenile facilities, and I was coming back. And throughout that journey right there, I met a lot of guys from other sections of DC that was doing their thing like I was. At the time, I'm thinking that 11-year-olds, 12, 13-year-olds, it's not doing it how we doing it over this side of Northeast, but I ended up connecting and meeting with some guys from other sections of the city that was doing it just as the same as we was doing.
Okay, and you actually met Wayne Perry in juvenile.
Right.
Okay. And Wayne Perry was generally considered to be Alpo's hitman later on. What was your relationship like with Wayne?
Man, Wayne was cool. I wouldn't, you know, we didn't hang out together, nothing like that, right? We respected each other. You know, man, I knew what was up with him. He knew what was up with me. And we was cool, and that's basically it. We ended up, you know, we formed a kind of a bond with each other out of respect for each other, because of our level of violence, the shit that we was, you know, capable of. So we knew what we was dealing with when we was dealing with each other.
Okay, so then at 16 years old, and I'm going off the book here, you connected with a local hustler in the area. I guess you called him Rocco.
Yeah.
In your book, and you end up going to New York City and coming back on a Greyhound with 5 kilos of coke.
Right.
Was that the first time you actually were dealing with that type of weight?
Yeah, that was the first time I seen that much weight, that much. You know, man, when we took that trip to New York, that was the first time. Yeah.
Okay. So now you have a bunch of weight and you can't move that yourself. So you start to build up a crew?
Yeah, you know, my crew was at any given, like I say, how Montana was, it was like everybody ate. Nobody was you know, starving. Nobody was scratching the plate for some crumbs. So let's say, for instance, if I got 5 keys, I'm breaking them down with 5 of my men. And everybody gonna eat on the same level. It ain't gonna be no big eyes, little U's in my circle. I might be the one to orchestrate shit. You know what I mean? I might be the one that can move a little better than them and connect with people and build rapport with people better than them. But we all gonna eat on the same level.
Okay, and these guys were called the Montana Boys.
Right.
And you guys actually locked down Montana Terrace.
I mean, nah, Montana wasn't locked down by not by one particular crew or group. You know what I mean? It was just you know, it was different levels of shit. You know what I mean? And we did our thing. Other guys at Montana did their thing. It was no one big, you know, crew of people. You had different people in different sections of Montana Terrace that was doing their thing.
As your drug operation starts to grow, it attracts violence. It attracts the jack boys who don't want to sell drugs. They'd rather rob the drug dealers, the kidnappers, the extortionists, the dirty cops, everything else like that. So the violence level starts to step up. You talked about in the book how you used to carry a Chrome 40 with you everywhere and a bulletproof vest. So you would wake up in the morning, put on your vest, and go outside every day like it was a war.
Every day.
Okay. What was that process like to go into that type of environment, walking out of the house every day, knowing that that might be the last time you ever walk out of your house?
I didn't think that way, Vlad. You know what I mean? I didn't think that this would be the last day that I would walk out my house. And to be honest with you, back then, the way my mind worked back then, I loved that shit. You know what I'm saying? To be honest with you, like I look forward to coming out and going on the block and just doing my thing, get with my men, get with my circle of friends, and we just breathing that air, man, of the city. We just taking that air, that aroma of all the gun smoke that's in the air around DC at the time. So, you know, it just you had to experience it and had to be there to really know and what I'm talking about and how that atmosphere really was. You know what I mean? It was that shit was what we lived for.
Well, we talked about the situation about how you saw someone get their head blown off with a shotgun in front of you. Was that the first time you saw someone get shot?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the
Okay.
first time.
At what point were people starting to shoot at you, though?
I want to say, man, it was a situation where I had allowed myself to get involved in something that I wasn't supposed to get involved with because of the area I'm from. And it was some guys that they got into it with another group of hustlers, man, from a whole another side of Northeast. And by me being from Montana and being, you know, the hitter, if you will, you know what I mean, then they felt as though that if we get Sean out of the way, then you know we cut the head off the horse and the body gonna fall or whatever, right? But it didn't quite work out the way they planned. So, you know, man, it is what it is.
Well, you got to be known as someone that would get his hands dirty.
It came about because, like I said, I had a crew that was they wasn't known for violence. They wasn't known for that. They was known for, you know, the majority of them was pretty boys. They like to fly. They like to fly clothes, like to get dressed, go out to the clubs, mess with all the women. And they was just real good dudes. So by me being the one that had that appetite for violence, I'm not gonna let nobody carry my men, my circle. So I was always